Next, I'd like to introduce Mitch Mitchell. He's one of our awesome JavaScript developers at Bitovi. He's been working as the only dev on a project for the last few years. And out of that, he's learned a lot about how to work in a way that that makes sense when you're working solo. So Mitch, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a solo dev and essentially a team lead of one, which I've been for quite a while. A little bit of my background. For about a decade, I had my own consulting business in Chicago. It was just me, so I was also a team lead of one. My wife and I finally got tired of the cold, so now I'm a Bitovi dev and team lead of one in Dripping Springs, Texas, which is a little bit nicer, at least weather-wise. Do miss some of the food and culture from Chicago. But the reason I say that is being solo for that long, I've felt all of these things, that there's no help out there for me, or I should know how to do it. You know, people are hiring me as an expert. I should already know how to do this or be able to figure it out. Maybe I don't want to bother other people to try to get their help. You know, you just get stuck in your own head, or, you know, the worst thing is somebody might know that you don't know something. Which, you know, really sets it up that you should just be able to ask for help. That's going to be the most important point I'm trying to make today. And then I'm going to give you a couple of ideas how to help do that and get yourself more comfortable asking for help. One is building your own team, and then some rules about etiquette that I think are important when you are asking for help. So the first thing is, you know, it's just asking for help is a hurdle in and of itself. What we do day in and day out, development and design for web apps, is hard. A lot of times it looks like this, even when we know what we're doing or think we know what we're doing. And really the difference between this and getting to the real result sometimes is just a little bit of help. A little bit of trivia for you guys, if you've seen this before. I just found out when I was Googling this that this is actually the guy who made this. This is his wife's sushi recipes. I don't know if everybody knew that about the Matrix code, but really that's what you're seeing every Matrix movie, which I thought was appropriate for Chasen because that's one of his favorite lunches. So the most important thing when you're going to ask for help is to kind of let go of your own ego. It's pretty easy to feel all those things that you should know it already and all that stuff. And one thing I said to Justin after I had been bothering him many times was like, God, I just feel so dumb today. And he gave me one of the greatest quotes I've had. He's like, it's better to appear dumb and get smart than to appear smart and stay dumb. And I've repeated that to myself many times. It's a very powerful statement. And it's nice to know that, you know, Bitovi encourages asking for help in that way from the top down. So a good question is when do you ask for help? Some people will time box it at like 30 to 60 minutes, depending on how hard it is. That's pretty good. Sometimes it should be more immediate than that. For example, when I was in my first person interview with Brian, the other fearless leader of Bitovi, for the first couple of minutes, I was like this guy. I was a deer in the headlights. He was talking what I felt like was so fast about a new framework I'd never heard anything about. And I'm like, you know, I should just thank him for his time, get back on the plane, come back down to Texas. But I stopped myself and I said, you know what? I'm just going to start asking questions. The worst thing that can happen, they can say, you're too green, you're no good for us. And I feel, maybe Brian would argue against it if he remembers, but I feel that's what changed me from this to being the chosen one and got me the job actually in the first place. Because his feedback was like, you were stuck for a while, but you started asking really good questions. And I felt like that was an important difference in that interview's success. So the other thing that I recommend for help is if you're solo especially, or even if you just feel solo on a team, is just build your own personal support system, your own team. They may be a ragtag bunch, but you know they'll have your back, and you'll also learn to kind of help them as well. Oops, too far. So I have two kind of sets of teams, but they tend to overlap a lot in kind of a Venn diagram. There's experts, like I know when I have a Steel.js problem, I go to Matthew. I know like when I have a design problem, I go to Dr. Wilson. So I have my team of experts that I like to call on when I have certain problems and I'm just stuck. But really, I prefer the rubber duck session, which could be almost anyone. It could be somebody who doesn't even do code. For those of you that aren't familiar, this is the idea that you have like an actual physical rubber duck on your desk, and you speak to it to explain your problem. And the act of speaking out loud will help you solve the problem. I prefer to do those sessions with real people who can ask me questions back. Sometimes that will spark a lot of things. And I also prefer to have as many rubber ducks as possible. Like I want to be like Austin here and just have 1,000 rubber ducks so I can draw on 1,000,000 people. The final team member that not many people know about or don't utilize enough, probably most of us, is you just need to take breaks. Sometimes you can be your own best team member if you take a break and let your brain rest, change your, your viewpoint. You need to get enough sleep. You can stand up and stretch every once in a while. You should do some exercise. You can take a nap. Sometimes just running an errand and doing another project that's like not related to code at all, like the dishes, can make all the difference. Here at Bitovi, we made a thing called Coffee Break Channel. So anybody at any time, since we're all virtual offices, can say, hey, we're gonna have a coffee break and it's 15 minutes. We get together and just take a little time off, talk to each other, and just like you would in a real office. And those little breaks can actually bring you to successful resolution of some code problems. Last thing I want to address is, so you've already gotten over the hill, you're ready to ask for help, you're going to feel good about it, a personal challenge. You kind of got your team members together. There's some proper etiquette that you should learn, that I had to learn, about how and when to ask for help. The first one, RTFM. I don't know if they still say that, but I call it Read the Friendly Manual. There's a different version. Google it, kids, if you haven't heard of it. But basically, like, if you know what your problem is and you know at least the realm you're in, sometimes just looking at the manual can solve your problem. I had a recent situation where I was using a let statement in a stash, and I had put it inside of a custom sub element. And in reading the documentation later, after I had already asked for help, I found out that that wasn't supported. I moved it up 2 lines in the code, everything started working. So if I had just gone and looked at the manual for stash and the let statement in that instance, I probably would have solved my problem in 5 minutes instead of bothering poor Kevin. The second one is learn how to take your problem in your app or your instance and make it as simple version of it as possible. Use a CodePen, JSBin, Fiddle, whatever you like to use. That will help people. Matthew, again, helped me with that. There was a couple of days I was hammering with questions for him, and he kept saying, can you make me a CodePen? Can you make me a CodePen? And when the act of making the CodePen, I actually solved my own problem, which is sort of a hidden side effect of that. But it also helps people who are going to look at that. Maybe you submit an issue with a CodePen. If they're going to look at it 2 days later, a week later, it makes it really simple for them to understand the problem you're asking about, rather than have it all wrapped in your app's context that ends up just being a lot of noise. And the final thing is, and this is maybe the most important, is once you've gotten into this habit of asking for help, help others, give back to the community. If you ask a question, for example, in the community, or you do a pull request for something and you either find or create the solution yourself, share it back in that same thread so other people can see it. Sometimes people are reading that thread, they have the same problem, but they don't, chime in or ask for help as well. And so you putting the solution there kind of helps them get through that problem. The other side effect of that, which is great, is sometimes if I go read a manual and I see a grammar mistake or I see something that's unclear and I do a pull request, then suddenly I have open source contributions, which are good for everybody involved. Okay, final thing, ask me for help. I'm around. I'm on the Bitovi community Slack. I'm actually under Mitch on the community Slack, so that's my nickname. There's so many mics in the world that when I'm in a crowded room, I go by Mitch. But there's some other resources I have here, which I can also post or Slack later. Just the basic Bitovi sites for CanJS, Jump.js, Steel.js, and some developer sites. One I want to mention is Smashing Magazine was something that Ryan Wilson told me about. I had not heard about it. That's like a design UX website, and that was actually really interesting, pretty useful to me the other day. So appreciate it. Thanks for your time, and Jason.
Any questions or comments?
I had a quick question, Brian here. how do you go about, if say I wanted to find a code consultant, and one step further than just sharing on Stack Overflow, you know, I wanted someone to actually sit down and help look at my code. But that can be a bit of a process of trying to share the correct repositories, and maybe they need AWS access, and then you're getting to signing NDAs. Obviously, it can get a little complicated. I'm wondering if you've used any sort of the air pairing, or more like finding a consultant that can do a screen share and actually help sit down with you, someone that might have expertise in the realm of, you know, what you're working on, but out of your organization, and more than just kind of posting in a forum somewhere. I'm curious if you can kind of give some examples of ways you've used like real live screen share, or sit down with someone in person to have them help you.
Yeah, good question. I have not used the screen share other than like in my IT life, reversing it and helping like family with fixing their computer problems remotely. But I have used the in-person one. So if I've gone to a meetup before where either I heard somebody that was talking, but generally it's like I'm sitting next to somebody that says something interesting or asks a good question. And I've said, hey, can I just buy you a coffee and you can show me this code thing or help explain this thing to me? And most people are really happy to do that, you know. And I've had good luck with that. And plus you get to like, you know, expand your network and meet new people that are in your local area that do code. But I'd be surprised if there's not like a forum or another community that lets you do that. I know in the community Slack, you can do that just with Slack's tools. And obviously I've done that before as well. And that's not limited to just, you know, people in the company of Bitovi. So yeah, I've had good luck with in-person ones, but I've not used the remote one very much, but I would think it would work the same once you've covered that, you know, initial introduction and everything.
I wanted to add that I have used the website Upwork to this effect. They have their developers on Upwork that have even per minute billing if you just have like really quick questions. So that's a potentially useful forum as well.
Nils and Justin have some good comments too in the chat. Nils mentioned co-working spaces for, you know, probably meeting new people and talking to people, which is good. And then Justin mentioned if it's related to an open source project, people working on open source can usually be pretty helpful too. So they're another good resource. Good comment.